The asteroid outpost hung in the void like a jewel trapped in an endless abyss. Designed to mine volatile isotopes, Station Helion was a precarious balance of human ingenuity and interstellar recklessness. For Rin of the Calithian Shadowclade, it was just another battleground. She stalked through the station's dimly lit corridors, her form cloaked in a shimmering stealth field. Each step was silent, her twin heartbeats steady as the mission briefing echoed in her mind. Her target was Cade Alistair, a human diplomat turned alleged spy, whose actions had incited tensions between the United Stellar Coalition and her people, the Calithian Dominion. Evidence of his espionage had been irrefutable, or so her handlers claimed. All Rin cared about was the contract. Find him. Neutralize him. Leave no witnesses. She rounded a corner, her claws grazing the hilt of her phase dagger. The blade was a marvel of Calithian craftsmanship, capable of slicing through most materials as easily as her resolve had cut through a lifetime of moral ambiguity. She scanned the corridor ahead, her visor translating the human writing on the walls into her native glyphs. Reactor core access. Authorized personnel only. She smirked. It was as though the humans wanted their secrets stolen. Rin tapped into the station's surveillance feeds with a flick of her neural implant. Cameras painted a picture of Cade Alistair hunched over the reactor's primary interface, his figure bathed in the cold glow of its warning lights. He moved with urgency but lacked the precision of a trained engineer. The human was in over his head. A perfect moment to strike. The assassin moved forward, her steps synchronized with the hiss of the station's ventilation system. She slipped into the reactor chamber, her eyes narrowing as she studied her prey. Cade's auburn hair was damp with sweat, his jacket discarded in a crumpled heap on the floor. His fingers danced across the console, their motion frantic but determined. Rin stepped closer, her blade gleaming in the reactor's pulsing red light. The reactor groaned, a tortured beast on the brink of collapse. Cade cursed under his breath as he rewired yet another panel, his knuckles scraped raw from handling the jagged machinery. The system was worse than he'd imagined. If he couldn't stabilize the core in the next 5 minutes, there wouldn't be a station left to save, or a diplomat left to kill. Your form is sloppy, came a voice, low and venomous. Cade spun, his eyes locking onto the assassin stepping from the shadows. The first thing he noticed was her eyes, iridescent, liquid gold, and filled with predatory intent. The second was the blade she held, its edge humming with energy. "Well, this is awkward," he said, holding up a wrench like a makeshift weapon. "I don't suppose you're here to help?" "I'm here to kill you," Rin replied flatly, her blade inching closer. Cade's brain raced. The reactor was a ticking time bomb, and now he had a knife-wielding alien to contend with. "Right," he said, "but if you kill me now, we'll both be vaporized. The reactor's on the verge of meltdown. I fail to see how that's my problem." Cade gave her a lopsided grin. "You've got 2 hearts, right? That's twice the chance of a cardiac arrest if we die here." Rin froze. The sheer absurdity of his statement caught her off guard. "What?" "It's called gallows humor," he explained. "You know, lighten the mood before we're atomized." To his astonishment, the assassin's lips twitched. It wasn't a smile, but it was close enough to embolden him. "Look," he said, "you kill me, and you'll die too. Or you can help me fix this thing, and we can get back to trying to murder each other later." Rin hesitated, her instincts warring with logic. The Shadowclade trained her to be ruthless, but they also valued survival above all else. And Cade was right. If the reactor detonated, her mission would end in failure regardless. "Fine," she said, lowering her blade. "But the moment the reactor is stable, I finish this." "Deal," Cade said, turning back to the console. "Now grab that toolkit and try not to stab me with it." As they worked, the reactor chamber filled with a tense silence broken only by the hum of machinery and the occasional crackle of sparks. Rin's movements were swift and precise, her alien dexterity putting Cade's fumbling to shame. Still, he managed to hold his own, directing her to parts of the system she was unfamiliar with. "So," Cade said, tightening a valve, "do all Calithian assassins moonlight as electricians, or am I just lucky?" "Silence," Rin snapped, though her tone lacked its earlier venom. Right. Focus on the mission." "Got it." He paused, then added, "You know, if this whole assassination gig doesn't work out, you'd make a hell of an engineer." Rin rolled her eyes, the motion strangely human. "You talk too much. And you're not used to anyone talking back," he countered. For a moment, there was a flicker of something in her expression. Amusement, maybe. Then it was gone, replaced by the hardened resolve of a killer. The reactor stabilized with a final hiss of steam. Cade stepped back, wiping grease from his hands as he exhaled in relief. "That should hold for now," he said. "Good teamwork." Rin's blade was in her hand before he could finish the sentence. "Our deal is complete." "Whoa, hold on." Cade raised his hands. "I don't suppose I can convince you to let me explain why I'm not the bad guy here? I've heard enough lies from humans." "Then hear the truth," Cade said, his voice steady despite the blade inches from his throat. "Someone framed me. I don't know who, but I think they're using this station to cover their tracks. If you kill me, you'll be doing their dirty work." Rin hesitated. The conviction in his voice was unsettling. Assassins were trained to read lies, and Cade wasn't lying. Before she could respond, an explosion rocked the station. The floor buckled, and alarms blared as fire erupted in the corridor outside. Rin and Cade exchanged a glance, their uneasy truce momentarily forgotten. "Looks like we're not done yet," Cade said. Rin sighed, reluctantly lowering her blade. "You're insufferable." "And you're stuck with me?" he shot back, grabbing a weapon from a nearby locker. "Now let's find out who's trying to kill us." The corridors of Station Helion were a chaotic mess. Emergency lights cast strobing shadows, and the distant roar of fire was punctuated by the grinding groans of the station's failing structure. Cade led the way with practiced efficiency, weapon in hand, while Rin followed silently, her dagger ready. Their temporary alliance was as fragile as the reactor they'd just saved. "Whoever set that explosion doesn't want us alive," Cade muttered, scanning the corridor ahead. "That much is obvious," Rin replied. "The question is, who are they working for? Your coalition or my dominion?" Cade shot her a glance. "If they're trying to kill both of us, doesn't that suggest they're working for neither?" Rin tilted her head, considering. "Or it means they're eliminating loose ends to keep this conspiracy hidden." They rounded a corner and came upon a security checkpoint, its reinforced doors blown inward. The bodies of coalition security personnel lay scattered, their uniforms scorched. Cade grimaced at the carnage, while Rin stepped over the fallen with detached efficiency. "These aren't Dominion weapons," she noted, examining a blackened wound on one of the bodies. "The plasma signature is unfamiliar." Cade crouched beside her, running a hand over a damaged console. "Unfamiliar to you, maybe," he said grimly. "This tech's too advanced for the coalition, too. Someone's playing a much bigger game." As they pressed on, the mystery deepened. Every console Cade hacked and every body Rin examined pointed to a single conclusion. A third faction was operating in secret, manipulating both the coalition and the Dominion. The implications were staggering. If the shadow-clad assassin was beginning to trust Cade's version of events, she didn't show it. At least not yet. They finally reached the station's central control hub, a massive room dominated by a holographic projection of the surrounding sector. Cade moved to the main console, his fingers flying across the interface. "If there's anything here that explains what's going on, it'll be in the station logs." Rin stood guard, her eyes scanning the room. "Hurry. I don't trust the quiet." Cade smirked. "I thought assassins liked silence." "I prefer controlled silence," she replied, her gaze never wavering. "This feels wrong." A low hum filled the air, and Rin's instinct screamed a warning. "Get down." She tackled Cade to the floor just as a laser beam sliced through the console, vaporizing it in a burst of sparks. From the shadows stepped a figure clad in sleek, black armor, its helmet adorned with a glowing red visor. "Well, that's new," Cade muttered, scrambling to his feet. The armored figure raised a weapon that didn't match any known designs. Rin charged, her blade slashing in a blur of motion. The figure countered effortlessly, their weapon morphing into a staff that deflected her attacks with ease. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed, the sound echoing through the control hub. Cade grabbed a fallen guard's plasma rifle and opened fire, forcing the figure to retreat a step. "Any idea who this guy is?" he shouted. Rin snarled, landing a glancing blow that scraped across the figure's armor. "No, but I'm going to find out." The fight was brutal and fast-paced. But the armored figure wasn't just skilled, they were superior. Each of Rin's strikes was met with perfect counters, and even Cade's desperate shooting did little more than slow them down. "They're toying with us," Rin growled, her chest heaving. "No kidding," Cade said. "Got any bright ideas?" The figure raised their weapon again, this time aiming at the reactor core visible through a reinforced glass panel in the wall. Cade's eyes widened in realization. "They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to destroy the whole station." Before Rin could react, the figure fired. The glass shattered, and alarms blared as the reactor's containment field destabilized. The armored figure vanished in a flash of light, leaving only a faint distortion in the air where they'd stood. Rin cursed in her native tongue. "Coward!" "Focus!" Cade yelled, rushing to the reactor console. "We need to stabilize this again, or we're toast." Rin joined him without hesitation, her hands flying over the controls. Despite her earlier disdain for his skills, she now worked in tandem with him, their movements synchronized. "Whoever they are, they've had access to tech beyond what either of our governments possess," she said. Cade nodded grimly. "And they're willing to kill both humans and Calithians to keep it secret." Once the reactor was stable again, Rin and Cade retreated to a maintenance corridor to regroup. The encounter had left them shaken, but not defeated. Rin leaned against the wall, her golden eyes fixed on Cade. "If what you're saying is true, then the Coalition isn't just incompetent, it's corrupt." Cade frowned. "And if you're right, the Dominion's leadership isn't much better. This third faction might have infiltrated both sides." Rin considered him for a long moment, then extended a clawed hand. "Truce." Cade raised an eyebrow. "I thought we already had one." "This is different," she said, her tone serious. "If we're going to survive this, we need to trust each other." He hesitated, then shook her hand. "Deal." "Good," Rin said, pulling her hand away. "Now let's find out who's behind this, and make them regret it." Their search led them deeper into the station's restricted zones, where the walls were lined with advanced equipment that seemed far beyond the Coalition's standard issue. Cade activated his neural implant, scanning for anomalies in the station systems. "There's a signal here," he said. "Encrypted, but it's broadcasting to somewhere outside the sector." Rin frowned. "Can you trace it?" "Not easily. It's buried under layers of encryption." He paused. "But if we can get to the communications relay, I might be able to track its source." "Then we move," Rin said. "Quickly. Whoever sent that assassin won't stop until we're dead." They set off toward the relay, their steps guided by a mix of urgency and unease. As they moved, Rin found herself glancing at Cade more often than she liked. His resilience and resourcefulness were unexpected, even impressive. For the first time in her career, she questioned the simplicity of her mission. The human diplomat wasn't just a target anymore. He was an ally, and maybe, just maybe, something more. The communications relay was buried in the lower decks of Station Helion, a labyrinth of access tunnels and abandoned storage compartments. The area was eerily silent, the hum of the station's life support systems barely audible. Cade led the way, his weapon drawn, while Rin moved with the lethal grace of a predator. "We're close," Cade said, checking his neural scanner. "But the encryption's getting stronger the closer we get. Whoever's behind this doesn't want anyone snooping." Rin didn't respond, her focus on the shadows ahead. She could feel it, that tingling sensation at the base of her skull that told her they weren't alone. Her claws twitched, eager for action. They reached the relay room, its massive doors sealed shut. Cade crouched beside the access panel, pulling a multi-tool from his belt. "This might take a minute." Rin stepped back, her gaze darting around the corridor. "We don't have a minute." The faint sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere above them. Rin's head snapped up, her enhanced vision scanning the catwalks overhead. Nothing, but she didn't trust the silence. "Hurry," she hissed. "Almost there." Cade's voice was tense, his hands working frantically. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a room filled with consoles, holographic displays, and a towering comm array in the center. Cade rushed inside, immediately beginning to interface with the system. Rin followed, her blade drawn. The feeling of being watched hadn't abated. If anything, it was worse now. "We're exposed here." Cade waved her off. "Just give me a few seconds. There's a ton of data to sift through." Rin was about to retort when a burst of gunfire erupted behind them. She spun, her phase dagger deflecting a barrage of energy bolts as armored figures poured into the room. There were 3 this time, each clad in the same sleek black armor as their previous assailant. "Company," Rin growled, launching herself at the nearest attacker. The room erupted into chaos. Rin's blade flashed like a living thing, carving arcs of light as she tore into the enemy. One of the armored figures fell, their weapon clattering to the floor, but the other 2 pressed forward with brutal efficiency. Cade ducked behind a console, returning fire with the plasma rifle. "Any chance we can have a conversation about this?" he shouted over the din. "Focus on the relay." Rin barked, her blade clashing with another enemy's staff. Sparks flew as they exchanged blows, the assassin's movements a blur of precision and ferocity. Cade gritted his teeth, accessing the relay's controls even as stray bolts of plasma scorched the air around him. The encryption was dense, but he was making progress. "Almost there," he called out. Rin didn't answer. She was locked in a vicious duel with the final attacker, their weapons striking in a deadly rhythm. The enemy was good, too good. For every move she made, they had a counter, and she was beginning to tire. Cade saw her falter and made a snap decision. Grabbing a heavy wrench from the console, he hurled it at the attacker with all his strength. The tool struck the armored figure's head with a resounding clang, momentarily staggering them. Rin didn't waste the opening. With a swift, fluid motion, she plunged her blade into the gap between the armor plates. The figure collapsed, and Rin turned to face Cade, her chest heaving. "I didn't need your help," she said, though her tone was less biting than usual. "Sure you didn't," Cade replied, smirking. "Now, can we leave before more of these guys show up?" Cade returned to the console and finalized the trace on the mysterious signal. The holographic display lit up, showing a star map with a blinking point far outside known Coalition or Dominion space. "There," he said, pointing. "That's where the signal's coming from. A system in uncharted territory." Rin frowned. Why would anyone base an operation out there? There's nothing but void. "Maybe that's the point," Cade replied. "If you don't want anyone to find you, you hide where no one looks." Before they could speculate further, a low rumble shook the station. Cade's face fell as he glanced at the readouts. "That's not good." "What now?" Rin asked. "The reactor's destabilizing again," Cade said. "Only this time, it's deliberate. They've triggered a cascade overload." Rin's eyes narrowed. "They're going to destroy the station to cover their tracks." "Exactly," Cade said, grabbing a portable data drive and downloading everything he could from the relay. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before this whole place goes up." "Then let's move," Rin said, leading the way out. The journey to the hangar bay was a harrowing sprint through collapsing corridors and rising flames. The station groaned under the strain, its supports failing as the reactor overload spread. Cade's neural implant warned of imminent structural collapse, and even Rin's enhanced reflexes were tested as debris rained down around them. They reached the hangar with seconds to spare. Cade's shuttle was a small, unassuming craft, but it was fast. He slapped the console to open the bay doors while Rin provided cover, her blade fending off the last of their pursuers. "Get in," Cade shouted, powering up the engines. Rin hesitated for only a moment before leaping aboard. The shuttle's hatch sealed behind her, and they shot out of the hangar just as the station erupted in a blinding explosion. Safe in the shuttle's cockpit, Cade leaned back, his heart pounding. Well, that was fun. Rin glared at him, but there was no real malice in her expression. "You're insufferable. And you're starting to tolerate me," Cade countered, grinning. "So, what now? We've got the data, but whoever's behind this won't just let us walk away." Rin looked out the viewport, her golden eyes reflecting the stars. "We find the source of the signal," she said, "and we end this." Cade nodded, his smile fading. "Together?" "For now," she replied, though the faintest hint of a smirk tugged at her lips. The The stars stretched into lines as the shuttle jumped to hyperspace, hurtling toward the unknown and a conspiracy that would test their fragile alliance to its limits. The shuttle emerged from hyperspace into a starless expanse. The uncharted system was a graveyard of cosmic debris. Shattered asteroids, the remains of derelict ships, and a haze of ionized gas that shimmered faintly against the dark. It was a void within the void, unnervingly quiet. Rin adjusted her stance, claws grazing the hilt of her phase dagger. This doesn't feel right. Cade's hands hovered over the shuttle's controls, his brow furrowed. Scanners are picking up something. A faint energy signature, dead ahead. Be specific, Rin said, her tone clipped. Specific? Sure, Cade replied, rolling his eyes. It's big, it's weird, and it's definitely not natural. The faint signature resolved into a colossal structure, partially obscured by the debris field. It was like nothing either of them had ever seen. The shape was organic and angular at the same time, with sweeping curves that ended in jagged edges. Its surface shimmered as though alive, shifting patterns of light playing across it like a heartbeat. That's no coalition or Dominion tech, Cade said, his voice low. This is something else. Something ancient, Rin murmured. Her people's myths spoke of lost civilizations and forgotten gods who once shaped the stars. The structure resonated with that same eldritch energy. As the shuttle drew closer, proximity alerts flared. A sleek, black ship, identical to the one their armored attackers had used, slipped from the shadows, its weapons charging. Guess they were expecting us, Cade muttered, slamming the shuttle into evasive maneuvers. The black ship opened fire, plasma bolts streaking through the void. Cade's shuttle veered wildly, its shields flaring as a bolt glanced off its hull. Rin strapped into the co-pilot's seat, her claws gripping the armrests. Do you even know how to fly? She growled as the shuttle dipped into a spiraling dive. Define no, Cade shot back, sweat beading on his forehead. Rin gritted her teeth. Let me drive. Fine, Cade said, throwing his hands up. Take the controls. Let's see how an assassin handles dogfights. She didn't hesitate. Rin's hands moved with inhuman precision as she took over, pulling the shuttle into a series of sharp rolls and feints. The black ship followed, its pilot matching her moves with unnerving skill. They're good, Rin admitted, her voice tight. Yeah, but you're better, right? Cade said, already working on something at his console. Better? Always, she replied with a smirk, flipping the shuttle upside down and cutting the engines. The black ship shot past them, momentarily disoriented. Cade grinned, slapping a button. And now for the fireworks. The shuttle's rear thrusters ignited, launching a cluster of mines. The black ship maneuvered sharply, but not fast enough. The mines detonated in a cascade of explosions, crippling its engines. Boom, Cade said, leaning back as the black ship drifted helplessly into the debris field. Rin raised an eyebrow. You could have done that sooner. And missed the part where you showed off? He replied. Never. With their attacker neutralized, the shuttle docked with the ancient structure. Up close, the surface was even more unsettling, shifting between textures that resembled metal, stone, and living tissue. A docking port irised open as they approached, as if inviting them inside. This is a bad idea, Rin said, her voice low. Yeah, Cade replied, grabbing his gear. But we're already committed, aren't we? They stepped into the structure, their boots echoing on the strange floor. The air was breathable but heavy, carrying a faint hum that seemed to vibrate in their bones. The walls glowed faintly, pulsating like veins beneath skin. This place is alive, Rin said, her claws flexing instinctively. Alive or just something pretending to be alive, Cade murmured, his neural implant flickering with static interference. The corridor led to a vast chamber dominated by an immense console-like structure. It was covered in glyphs that neither Cade nor Rin could decipher, but its purpose was clear. This was a command center. Cade approached cautiously, his neural implant syncing with the console. There's data here, he said. Old, encrypted, and, wait, this can't be right. What is it? Rin asked, her eyes scanning the chamber for threats. It's not just broadcasting a signal, Cade said, his voice tight with disbelief. It's receiving one. From multiple sources. Coalition, Dominion, and something else. Rin's golden eyes narrowed. Something else? Before Cade could answer, the console flared to life. A hologram appeared, a towering figure cloaked in shadow. Its voice was deep, resonant, and layered with an alien distortion. You should not have come here. Cade stepped back, his hand hovering near his weapon. Who, or what are you? The figure tilted its head, the movement unnervingly smooth. I am the Watcher, guardian of the Nexus. You are intruders in a place that must remain hidden. Rin stepped forward, her blade ready. Hidden from who? From all, the Watcher replied. Your species are not ready for what lies within this structure. Leave now, or be destroyed. Cade glanced at Rin. I don't think they're giving us much of a choice. Rin's gaze didn't waver. We didn't come this far to walk away empty-handed. What's so important that you're willing to kill to protect it? The Watcher hesitated, its form flickering. Knowledge that would unmake your fragile civilizations. Powers you cannot control. Turn back, or you will awaken what sleeps. What if we're already awake? Cade asked, his voice defiant. We've seen too much to stop now. The hologram faltered, its image distorting. Then you will not leave this place alive. The chamber began to tremble. Panels along the walls slid open, revealing drones armed with weapons of unfamiliar design. Rin and Cade exchanged a look. I hate to say it, Cade muttered, but I think we overstayed our welcome. Rin's claws flexed. Let's see what this Nexus is really hiding. The chamber erupted into chaos as the drones surged forward. Rin was a blur of motion, her phase dagger slashing through the first wave, their metallic frames sparking as they collapsed. Cade ducked behind the console, firing bursts from his plasma rifle. This is not sustainable, Cade shouted, blasting another drone. Rin growled, her movements precise but strained. Then make it sustainable. Find a way to shut them down. Cade's fingers flew across the alien console, his neural implants syncing with the system. If I can overload their control node, it might fry them all. Emphasis on might. Do it, Rin yelled, deflecting a bolt of energy aimed at his head. As Cade worked, the Watcher's hologram flickered and shifted, its voice filling the chamber. You are meddling with forces you do not understand. This Nexus holds the last remnants of a civilization destroyed by its own ambition. Do not repeat our mistakes. Thanks for the history lesson, Cade muttered, bypassing a final encryption layer. But we're kind of busy not dying here. Rin, covered in burns and scratches, backed toward the console as the drones regrouped. How much longer? Got it, Cade shouted, slamming his hand on a control pad. The chamber filled with a deafening hum as the drones froze mid-attack, their weapons dimming. One by one, they collapsed, lifeless. Rin slumped against the console, her chest heaving. That better have been permanent. Cade wiped sweat from his brow. I wouldn't bet on it. Whatever's running this place isn't happy. The chamber's walls pulsed, the glyphs shifting into new configurations. The Watcher reappeared, its hologram now distorted and unstable. You have chosen recklessness over wisdom. The Nexus will defend itself. A low rumble shook the structure. Panels in the walls slid apart, revealing a massive, central mechanism. It began to spin, radiating waves of energy that made the air shimmer. What is that? Rin demanded, shielding her eyes from the blinding light. Cade stared at the mechanism, his neural implant flickering. It's a weapon, or maybe something worse. It's powering up. The Watcher's voice grew quieter, as though fading. The Nexus is no weapon. It is a key. It unlocks what should remain sealed. The glyphs on the console flared one last time, and an image appeared. A swirling black void, tendrils of shadow stretching across the stars. Cade's stomach churned as he recognized it. A rift, a tear in the fabric of space. It's not just a key, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's a doorway. To what? Rin asked, stepping beside him. Something ancient, Cade replied. Something alive. The mechanism spun faster, its energy reaching a crescendo. The station began to quake, the very air vibrating with a sense of impending doom. Cade frantically searched the console for a way to stop it. "If we don't shut this down, that rift will open," he said, "and whatever's on the other side will come through." "Then shut it down," Rin snapped. "I'm trying," Cade yelled. "The controls are locked. Wait, there's a failsafe, but it's a one-way trip." Rin's golden eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means whoever activates it will have to stay here," Cade said. "The failsafe destroys the entire nexus." A long silence fell between them, broken only by the rising hum of the mechanism. "I'll do it," Rin said, stepping toward the console. Cade grabbed her arm. "No, you won't. This isn't your fight." "It became my fight the moment I spared your life," she replied, her voice steady. "I've killed for less. Maybe it's time I died for something more." Cade shook his head. "You don't have to. There's another way." "There's not," Rin said. She gently removed his hand and pressed her clawed fingers to his cheek, a gesture of respect among her people. "You're the one who can tell the galaxy what's happening here. Go." For once, Cade was speechless. He opened his mouth to protest, but the look in her eyes silenced him. Instead, he gave a solemn nod and turned toward the shuttle. "Rin," he said, pausing at the hatch, "I owe you." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "You owe me nothing, human. Go." As Cade's shuttle shot away from the Nexus, the structure began to glow, its energy building toward a final cataclysm. Through the viewport, he saw the rift begin to collapse, its dark tendrils retreating as the Nexus consumed itself. Inside, Rin stood at the console, her hand on the failsafe. As the energy surged around her, she closed her eyes, her twin hearts steady. For the first time in years, she felt peace. The Nexus exploded in a burst of light, its remnants swallowed by the collapsing rift. The shockwave rippled across the debris field, scattering it into the void. Weeks later, Cade sat in a coalition council chamber, presenting the data he'd salvaged from the Nexus. The conspiracy was exposed, the Third Faction's plans dismantled. Both the Dominion and the Coalition were forced to reckon with the truths they had ignored for too long. But Cade's mind wasn't on politics. It was on the assassin who had spared his life and given hers to save a galaxy that had branded her an enemy. Her name was whispered in dark corners and on distant worlds, a legend of sacrifice and redemption. And though Cade moved on, every star he saw reminded him of her golden eyes and the alien assassin who had made him laugh.